bookshop. It's the bookshop. It's the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It's Sam Feifel, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, writing, literature, being at conventions, in hotel rooms late at night after Celtics victory. And as always, I am joined by the co-owner of the Bookshop of Beverly Farms, my sister, and someone who is in Manchester, New Hampshire, Hannah Harlow. How are you doing tonight, Hannah?
It's so late. I mean, this is going to be an interesting show. I can't wait.
It's so late. It's so late. I know. You just got back from a very important owners' dinner at the New England International Booksellers of Independent Associations, I think was the conference you're at.
So much of that wrong, but that's cool. It wasn't just owners. It was the advisory committee to the New England Bookseller Association.
Oh, okay.
So it's a mix. There are some owners. There are some there are managers of bookstores there. There are sales reps from publisher representatives there.
Oh, sounds very capitalist. And you're not allowed to, I know that you have to watch out for any monopolistic, you don't want to be price fixing, you might all decide to charge the same amount for that product.
We're so careful about it. And it's like Amazon's out there ruining the world. And we're
it's don't talk about 10% off every Friday. Watch out.
We're all about to go out of business at any moment. But
I'm sure the Department of Justice is very concerned about the independent booksellers.
We're not international at all, but that's okay.
Sometimes we are, but not really tonight.
It's a good dinner. I'm here in Manchester for the spring forum for the New England Bookseller Association. And it's going to be a good time. We're going to learn about lots of new books.
Yeah, tomorrow all the authors show up. I don't get to see them because I kind of screwed things up. But I saw Jessica Anthony's going to be there, which I'm excited about. She's awesome. She has a new book coming out. Who are you introducing?
I'm introducing a woman named Nicole Truska. She wrote a memoir called Wonderland that is coming out this summer in July. Mm-hmm. And she lives in New York now, but she is she was born and bred Bostonian, kind of Southie, Somerville kind of area.
Okay. A book about Southie Boston. Uh-oh.
Well, her family members were, associated with the Winter Hill Gang. Yeah. And then...
Do we get some bussing in there too?
There's no bussing in this one.
Oh, man.
I know. You got to go read All Souls. But this has some All Souls vibes.
Yeah.
With just less dying and fewer N-words.
Good. Good.
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
She does a great job of capturing, why do we love massholes so much? Because they are jerks, but so charming.
I don't know. We've had this conversation before. There's a reason that I live in Maine personally.
Love the massholes.
Well, I just think having a state pick as its personality, we are dickheads on purpose, but we're lovable. I don't know. I think it's just a little bit much sometimes.
Thinking about telling that Shovels and Rope story as my intro.
Yeah, that was a good story.
That's a good story. I only have 2 minutes to introduce her though, and that story would just take too long.
It would take too long. It does involve a Valentine's Day
accident. It was Easter. No, it was Easter.
Easter. That's right.
Because we saw the band on Easter and they were hey, last time we were here on Easter in Boston, someone hit our car. We had to tell the story now.
Someone hit
our car, but and so we opened the note and the note said,
Happy Easter, asshole.
No, but no, we can't do this. The note said,
I don't know.
Learn how to drive, asshole.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Now your van's all dented. Happy fucking Easter.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And that, to me, is the most asshole thing.
Now your van's all dented.
It's your fault I hit your car.
Yeah, pretty much. Learn to drive. I don't the whole aggressive driving thing. I hate it because it's coming up into Maine now, and used to be you could just drive around Maine and look at the scenery, and now it's go faster.
Yeah, we should talk about some books.
All right. Let's
What are we
talk
going to talk about?
Let's talk
What's
about
our agenda?
We're talking. Oh, the agenda. So I forgot. First up, we're both going to talk about Ministry of Time, the hottest book on the face of the earth that we called months ago, and we will now actually talk about it. And then I have two highly obscure texts that I am reading right now. One is called The Physics of Sorrow by Georgie Gospodinov, a Bulgarian writer. And the other is Mercy, Mercy Me, the 2002 sort of biography, but more like PhD treatise on the art, loves, and demons of Marvin Gaye by Michael Eric Dyson.
Wow. Dyson. Okay. I have two novels. One is Sipsworth by Simon Van Booy. And the other is...
That might be even more obscure than mine.
The other is Real Americans by Rachel Khong, which is not obscure. It's like on the bestseller list. So I bet you don't know it.
No, I just like the word Kong a lot. Oh. Kong.
Well, I saw Godzilla and Kong last night.
Oh, that sounds terrible. Awful. That's one thing. I never have liked those at all. It's so dumb. It's like, oh, it's a little plastic thing destroying things. Who gives a shit?
No, it's highly entertaining.
Well, also highly entertaining is Ministry of Time, which is written by Kaliane Bradley. Do you know how to say this person's name? I don't even know if it's a man or a woman.
It's a woman.
A woman.
I don't know how to say her name. I was in my head saying Kaliane, but that's
Kaliane. I don't know about that.
Probably not right at all.
It's IANE.
Yeah. She's awesome. So this is a debut novel, and it's called The Ministry of Time. It just came out.
It is a time travel book.
It is a time travel book. But I know there are people out there who are like, I don't like time travel, but like, it's a time travel book where you like don't really experience the time travel itself. Like your main character is not time traveling actively. So the premise is
True. We never really leave this time.
You do not.
Other people do.
This time.
Yes, exactly. We see people come and go, but we never leave this time. Correct. Although there's like flashback texts that I guess are
right.
We sort of leave time, but it's we're reading them from the perspective of now, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not scary.
It's not scary. The premise quickly is it's set in the near future in England where they've discovered time travel, and in order to kind of test it out, they're bringing people from the past to the present, and they're bringing people who are about to die because, like, if things go wrong, like,
who cares?
It's okay. Who cares? They're about to die anyway.
This is standard time travel stuff. Like, you go and get someone about to die. Like, this is all through Legends of Tomorrow, which is one of my favorite DC shows. It actually is very similar to Legends of Tomorrow in many ways. Oh. But that's one of the standard things is that you go and grab someone who's about to die so history will not miss them and you'll not change history by bringing them into the future.
Yes. So our main character is a translator who works for the government, and they bring her into a super secret project to, like, they're pairing up people with the time travelers to kind of be their cultural liaison.
Correct.
So the thing I found hard to believe is that they would pair up this woman with her partner, who is a dude from like 1842. When did he come from? 1860.
I think he's like a Civil War guy. He was going to die in the Civil War, I think, probably is what I think.
Yeah, he was an Arctic explorer.
Oh yeah, the Arctic explorer guy. Yeah. They got him. He was like lost in the Arctic, and they grabbed him. Yeah. There's a military guy too.
Okay, well, her guy is a dashing Arctic explorer.
Right.
1840s, 1860s, one of those. Very gallant, like gentleman guy explorer.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty handsome.
Yeah, she's a second generation Cambodian refugee because her mother was a refugee from Cambodia. And so I think it's like, one of the things I like about this book is I cannot tell what it's making fun of and what it's taking seriously, right? Like on some level, it's commenting on how we treat refugees, right? Like there's clearly a parallel to like the whole refugee crisis in the UK and people coming across the Mediterranean, right? And so we've dragged these people out of their time and they are time refugees.
Right.
And the UK is like doing this half-assed job of like integrating them, right? So on one level, it's like, hey, we're going to take this refugee thing seriously. But then I feel like often, and also like the whole politics of identity it takes seriously in that her Cambodian heritage is so important to her and her status as a refugee informs her treating of these people. But then on the other hand, I think it's like mocking a lot of like the bureaucracy and DEI statements and all this stuff because they do all this like nonsense to integrate these people that like the whole time you're like, what are you doing? This is never going to work. And they're just like constantly baffled by the choices that these people from the past make, which I think is hilarious. Like it's very funny.
It's so funny. It's a very funny book.
But then like the end is not that funny. I don't know. Like,
It's like this kind of tender love story.
Yeah.
And
in a way. Yeah.
And then the end turns into this like spy thriller. So
it's a ton of different books at once. I agree with that.
So there's a lot going on. I will say there were definitely times where, I didn't know what she was trying to say about race and how we talk about race or identity politics.
Right. That's what I like about it. It just felt like it was exploring. It didn't feel like it was telling us this is the way to think, Right. It felt really curious.
There were some moments where I got confused. Like she has this Black colleague who they disagreed on certain issues. And I was sometimes like, I don't really understand what they're disagreeing about or like why they're mad at each other. Because there wasn't just enough. It was almost too subtle, some of the dialogue between them.
I agree with that. But I think it was, again, it's like this bureaucracy and office politics and stuff. Like, I think it wanted to make time travel mundane. Okay, we've invented time travel, but it doesn't make the world any cooler, right? Like, I feel like in science fiction, like, we have time travel, everything's cool, Doctor Who, But in this, it's like, we have time travel, but I still like have to pack this crappy lunch and we still have to like swish our badges in the right place. And, it was all just like, and like, this is the best we can do is like go find these like old people that we don't really like very much and like tour them around UK. Like, it was just time travel wasn't fun in any way.
Yeah. And then there's like this kind of little twist at the end.
Yeah, I don't like the twist.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming and I didn't like it.
I knew it was coming. I was surprised. It worked for me.
I totally saw it coming. I was like,
But
I can't even say it because it ruins it. But
yeah, you can't say anything. For me, this was like one of the best books I read in a while because from the minute I started it, it like sucked me right in. I was laughing. It felt fresh to me.
Oh, 100%. I loved it. I can't tell though. So I've been thinking about, I want to ask you why you think like this is the big book. Like we've sold like a dozen of them in the first week, which is crazy for us. Like it doesn't have a lot of markers of big book. Like, like it's a debut author. I guess sometimes those are big, but sci-fi and it's like all weird. It's got found texts and stuff. It's not like some sort of normal page turner.
Right. So I read that. I saw the galley arrived. I read this like months ago. And it was just one of those things that arrived in the mail and I was like, what's this? I'm going to check it out. And I read it right away and like loved it. And I have a friend who works at this imprint, right? So I texted her and I was like, what is happening? Like this book was amazing. And she wrote back and she's like, I think it's going to be huge. So like they knew, this is like one of those books that they seem to know from the jump was going to be big and they were going to put a ton of marketing behind it, right? They brought the author to Winter Institute.
Paraphernalia and stuff.
Yeah, they made all sorts of tchotchkes to go with it. Like they've been doing a lot of marketing. I think, they have the UK publication where like, I'm assuming it's simultaneous, but Like they could tell it was going to be big there. It was going out.
It's
big.
a British book. Americans love British accents. Like it's one of these books, like you read it with a British accent somehow.
But I also think it's one of those books that when people read it, they fall in love with it, and like you tell people about it.
Yeah,
like you have that word of mouth.
It's interesting. I think a lot of it is just this woman is a really good sentence level writer. Like I think it's like really effortless reading, super easy. Not in a bad way. I don't mean, it's just like you're never like stopped,
Yeah.
Like, some of these books, they're good, but there are times that like you just, I'm checking my phone. I don't know. Like I was never checking my phone reading this book. Like I was like crushing it. I think I read it in 3 days tops.
Yeah, totally. Totally crushed it.
I mean, I'm happy that it's good because it is intellectual. It's not pandering, in a lot of ways. Oh my God. What's what's his face important Booker Prize winning book that I just read?
Tremblay. No, not Tremblay. Sorry.
Not Tremblay.
Lynch.
Yes. The Paul Lynch book. What's it called? About
just naming all the Pauls I know. It's called Prophet Song.
Yes. Man, I can't believe you came up with it. That's good. Prophet Song actually is very similar in that you just keep reading it. And it's really important too, like it's also like super crushable. And so on that one, I was like, is the story really good or is he just like a great writer? And I was like, yes, both. On this, I don't know that the story is necessarily that good. I think the conceit is amazing, right? Yeah. Like she sets up all these awesome set pieces because it's like, it's like the woman from the 14th century or whatever. She's so delightful. Like she like loves to go out raving and stuff. And just the idea of this like woman raving and like loving
and like she's gay and she's from the 1400s.
Yeah, exactly.
And so she's like,
so I think a lot of it is, I think a lot of it is just like, look at the juxtapositions that I can create, and no one thought to really do it before, and so it is like delightful. I think the story falls apart. Like the resolution of the story, I'm like, okay, I guess.
Right. Like as you get to the end, it's like, but her characters are so good.
Yeah, no, they're super charming. Like all of this, like, and the narrator is, the narrator's not perfect. Like lots of,
she's not like a trained writer, right? The author, like this is a debut, and during lockdown she became obsessed reading about this. Like she discovered this like footnote about this Arctic explorer.
Oh yeah, they never found him or something, right?
Yeah, and so like she just kind of did a deep dive. Like it became an obsession. I was thinking about like Steve Almond talking about this in his book, and maybe on the pod last time about like you just, as a writer and as a fiction writer, it's like sometimes it's just like finding that obsession. Like what can you not stop obsessing about? And like this is a case where like that worked for her. Like I think she just became obsessed with this like the idea of this
like where did that
Arctic
kind of go?
explorer.
And like what if it happened this way, and what would it be like? And I think like I was saying about the DEI statements, what I like about it is it forces us to ask like why these anachronisms are anachronisms, and so like these people come from the past, they have their way of doing things, it's the normal way. And they're like, what do you mean you don't do this? This is how everybody does it, And we've moved like super far, and it forces us to ask, like, is what we're doing ridiculous? And I liked how she set up.
And I like, you saying that is, usually these time travel books are about us going to other times, but by bringing these other people to our time, right? It can show us, how ridiculous we're being, or like in other ways how great we are. Like, yes, Spotify, you can listen to any song anytime. It is awesome.
I know, that's actually one. She's clearly a music lover, or like I love the way that she integrated music into the book. Like I think that's really hard to do. All right, well, let's move on because we can talk about this forever. It's late. I will talk about a book that's not 100% actually it's not a time travel book really, but there is some time travel in it. So Georgie Gospodinov wrote this book, The Physics of Sorrow. It's been translated by Angela Rodell, And this is like the super hip Bulgarian book from the early 2000s. It's like the sort of end of grunge for Bulgaria, and coming out of the Cold War. And so like this author seems like he's about my age, our age, grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but like in Bulgaria, and under Soviet rule, and then not Soviet rule, and all this sort of stuff. And I guess it's really popular. I don't know. You sent it to me. It's an ARC. It comes out May 2024. Georgie is one of Bulgaria's most lauded authors. Also,
I mean, I'm trying to remember like why I sent it to you.
Angela Rodell is a prolific translator of Bulgarian literature, which I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm sure there's awesome Bulgarian, but how prolific can you be?
I don't know.
It's the first Bulgarian novel I've ever read. And so the controlling theme is of the Minotaur, right? The Minotaur stuck in the labyrinth. And so the main character, the Minotaur was abandoned by his family down there because he was like shamed into the labyrinth. And so the main character's grandfather had been abandoned by his mother. And like the family story was that like his sisters were like, "Are you just leaving this dude, our brother, behind?" And her mom's like, "Yeah, you can go get him if you want."
What?
And so it's like this story of like not being wanted. Basically, it's like he's like what do they call him? A latchkey child or whatever? Latchkey child in Bulgaria. And so he's like bored all the time. Actually, it reminded me of this whole rant on kids just aren't bored enough anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And so like, because he's bored, it's unclear whether it's meant to just be metaphorical or it's meant to be that he can actually do this. He can like tap into people's memories and like follow them down and like go watch their memories like as there's
So that's the time travel.
That's the time travel. Like he goes back
okay.
into the like early 20s to like, look at farmers or something. I don't know. But anyway, so he's been abandoned like the Minotaur, and he like falls in love with, mythos, and, he's a creative guy, and it's like, it's a cool, grungy novel. I like it. I'm not all the way done with it, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish it. It's, but anyway, like all of his creative happenstances are because his parents have abandoned him in a basement bedroom. And it's really funny because I went to the release of Heartwood, which is the art and literary magazine of Gray New Gloucester High School, which Gus had a painting in.
Ooh,
and it was really funny. So they, without any agenda, were like, "Oh, and if any of the contributors want to come up and talk about their pieces, you can do that." And then they just like waited. And so like a couple of seniors were like, "Oh Christ, this is embarrassing." So they get up there, and at least two of them in a row go, "Well, I was bored in science class, and so I drew this thing." And the next kid was like, "Oh, I was bored in Spanish, so I drew this thing." And like everybody was kind of laughing like I was ironic, but it's like, no, that's actually where great art comes from, is being bored and just getting creative, and it's a real problem. I think that these kids are not creative because they don't have to be. They're not bored ever.
Right. Totally.
It's like they don't have to make up their own little worlds.
Yeah, true. I have no segue to my next book.
No, I don't know why it's called The Physics of Sorrow also. I haven't got to that part yet. Just wanted to let everybody know. I don't know what the physics angle is, or I don't know. He didn't seem that sad. Really.
Okay. I'm going to talk about Sipsworth.
Oh yeah, Sipsworth. Yeah, that's Simon a bad
Van Booy.
name. This is terrible
great
title.
So,
Sipsworth. Is that the last name of the main character or what?
No, I'll get there. Hang on.
Oh, okay.
It's got a tough description, actually.
Does it?
It's about an old woman who befriends a mouse is the the one-liner, and it's kind of like
I'm not sure that's for me. Really, I don't.
The mouse
really...
doesn't like talk or anything. It's like an actual mouse.
Okay.
This woman is in her early 80s, and she was born in England, kind of outside of Oxford, and she's just returned after spending most of her adult or all of her adult life up until now in Australia. So she lived in Australia, got married, had a kid. And you understand from the beginning that she's lost both her husband and her son, her adult son. So she's now alone in her early 80s, and she's returned kind of to the family home outside of Oxford. And she's very lonely and just going about her days. And, it seems like in the beginning of the book, like she's just kind of like getting ready to die, basically.
Sounds like a quiet novel.
Yes. And then at one point, she kind of has this thing, I guess, where she she's kind of a dumpster diver in a way. Like people put out their, garbage, and she'll maybe like see what she'll bring stuff in.
Poke through. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the neighbor across the street leaves an aquarium out front with like stuff in it. And so she takes the aquarium because there's like a toy in there that reminds her of her son's childhood, like blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there's a mouse in the aquarium. So now she has a mouse in her house. And then, so I will say I got about halfway through.
And it's Stuart Little, and he drives out in a little car.
No, but I got about halfway through, and I was sort of like, where's this going?
Yeah.
This kind of a twist or like a reveal halfway through that like all of a sudden makes like things a little bit, like just falls into place a little bit, makes it that much more enjoyable. And then like the last half of the book is just her beginning to connect with different people in her community. And you see her like building this community, and has this very heartwarming message of like, it's never too late to start living your life.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
It's a very sweet, and it's short. It's like
Sipsworth?
Oh, Sipsworth is the name she gives
the
to
mouse.
the mouse.
Yeah. Okay.
Sipsworth is the mouth because she gives him water out of this little like Snapple cap or whatever.
Sounds like Stuart Little a little bit.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it's a sweet little story.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. It really does sound great.
Simon was at the Newburyport Literary Festival.
Oh.
And he was in the session. I didn't see it, but he was in conversation with his editor. This is a book published by Godin Press. His editor is named Joshua Bodwell. And Nola, our bookseller, was selling books at this event. And she said of all the events, she found this the most intriguing, that their conversation she found like super interesting.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was curious.
That's great. Well, I mean, not every novel needs to have things happening in it. No, it's great.
Right.
So my last book of the evening is Mercy, Mercy Me by Michael Eric Dyson. You know Michael Eric Dyson?
He's written a bunch of other books.
He's written a lot of books. He's a prolific author. He has an amazing author photo. Looks like he's about to do like judo or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Look at his he's like a badass.
Well.
He's written books about Tupac Shakur, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Between God and Gangsta Rap. So what he does, his thing is like connecting like Black culture into like mainstream American discourse, I guess. Like, he teaches, where's his professor at? This is back in 2002 when this book was published. He was the Avalon Foundation professor in the humanities at University of Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of like Philadelphia references. I got this because I was in Savannah on a bookstore tour. And one of the bookstores was a used bookstore, and they had a great selection. And so I went to their musician biographies. Musician biographies go out of print often very quickly.
Oh, right.
And
Yes.
I do not have a Marvin Gaye book in my collection. And so I really didn't look at it very closely. I was like, oh, Marvin Gaye book. And it was $5. So I bought it. It's a little more touchy-feely. There's a lot of stuff about Marvin Gaye's like sexuality that I'm supposed to care about, and like how it's helped open up sexuality for Black Americans, and that's great for them. But I did learn a lot about early Motown and his early career and the making of What's Going On, which is many people think top 10 rock and roll record of all time. So I don't know. Marvin Gaye is like a super fascinating guy. I didn't know that he basically never performed live after like he was 27 or so.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I didn't know this. So, that song Ain't No Mountain High Enough, like kind of a huge song,
Yeah, pretty big.
He did that with this woman, Tammy Terrell. So he and Tammy Terrell, like, were just this amazing duo, and they did Ain't No Mountain High Enough and some other songs, and they were huge, whatever. And they were performing all the time. Everything was great. And then at the 8, and she was real young. He was like 26, 27. She was 22, 23. She collapses on stage one night. Turns out she has brain cancer, is dead in a year. And he was so devastated by the loss of his like singing partner that he basically had stage fright for the whole rest of his life.
That's so sad.
So he was a huge stoner, and he was apparently he would get like super ripped before any like public performances. He did a bunch of national anthems at like famous sporting events, and he was famous for showing. He was just famous for like getting ripped like in the bathroom and showing up 30 seconds before he had to sing the anthem, and everybody was all stressed out. And they would always have like backups available, like so. Yeah, they're like, well, we were almost about to have this dude do it, some usher that was real good at it. But luckily he showed up right at the last second. There's a great story about like this 1986 All-Star game or something. But then he was murdered by his father. It's like this really tragic. Yeah. That's how he died. His father shot him.
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, it's a real tragic story. He would be old now, but he'd just be like in his 70s or whatever, he's been gone for a while.
Wow.
Just a super interesting story. So I'm never disappointed really by musician biographies. Autobiographies often done.
Totally. Yes. All the time.
But if people take the trouble to do a biography of a musician, you almost always learn something super interesting. So I enjoyed it. And just shout out to used bookstores. You should go buy stuff from them.
Totally.
What's your last book?
My last book is called Real Americans by Rachel Khong. This is her second book, I believe. Her first book was called Goodbye Vitamin. And it was one of those books that got like super hyped.
Yeah, I remember something
bestseller.
about it.
It was fine. It was one of those things where I was kind of like, what am I not getting? So I started reading Real Americans. I was very curious. And it has 3 sections. So the first section to me was the least interesting. The second and third. But second and third, I was deep into it. I was like, yes, I'm loving this. Because the first section starts out with a woman who's like probably like, she's graduating from college in like 2000, which is when I graduated from college. And, getting a job at like a .com in New York. And
terrible.
But she had an internship. She had no money. But it was also like the character in the beginning. She doesn't want to do anything. Like she's just kind of like sad girl,
The end of slacker culture. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was having a hard time, getting into her story.
Mm-hmm.
And then she meets this like super rich, super hot white dude. She's Chinese. Her parents came from China before she was born as young adults. And so she starts dating this white dude, but then, panics and breaks up with him. But then they get together and then they get married and then they have a kid. Right? So like once things speed up and like you get into like just stuff's happening and moving and you're kind of like, you want to see where the story's going.
So what do you
And
get?
then-
3 time periods of the same people or different people?
Yeah. So
in
then
3
the
different things?
second section, you jump ahead like 15 years, and then you start getting their son's story.
Oh.
So there is like there's a bunch of science happening.
Science?
There's some science happening
Wow.
here. So eventually, I don't want to give too much away, but it's about like you find out someone's been manipulating genes, DNA for both the first female character and then her son. And so that it's questioning like who, it's a lot of like, who are we? Where do we come from? What does it mean to be American? Because their families
guru going on there.
Yeah. And then the last section is the first character's mother. So kind of the grandmother.
Then we go back in time or?
Well, you go forward in time again, but she's telling the story to her now grown grandson of like what happened. So in that sense, yes, you then go back and back to China where her story kind of starts.
Family drama type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
immigration story.
Yeah. It was good. It was like, she is on a sentence level, like a super good writer in a way that like, sometimes it's good in that sense that like the words fall away and you just kind of like get into the story and you're not noticing everything passing. But it was, I think she has things to say and it was interesting. I think there were some elements that defied belief that you really had to like run with. And that was basically fine. But I recommend it. It's good.
Yeah. Well, speaking of science, you made me remember. We watched the entirety of Lessons in Chemistry.
Oh wow! Yeah, how was it?
Have you seen the whole thing?
No, I haven't seen any.
You read the book though, right?
I read the book.
Yeah. I'm not going to read the book. I don't know how faithful. Kristen read the book. She doesn't remember it well, so she can't really answer some of these questions.
Does the dog talk?
No, there's no. So I kept thinking the dog was going to be a much bigger character because you had prepped me for the talking dog.
Yeah.
And the dog is just like gets some scenes.
As a dog. Okay.
As a dog.
That's good.
And the dog is responsible for killing off the husband.
Oh, right.
It's like the dog's fault, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, no, the dog does talk. We do get interior dialogue from the dog.
Oh,
I think that's where I like really checked.
I don't know if I could handle that.
So the show is gorgeous, right? Brie Larson is the main scientist chick, and she's obviously hot, and she's always in like she's like super blinged out in like these awesome like 60s, 50s gear, whatever, 50s, I guess, right?
50s, yeah.
50s gear, post-war. And like with the show, I think the book is probably like this because I think it's supposed to be a little bit cartoonish, right? Like it's like, it's supposed to be a little bit playful and cartoonish.
It's a little ridiculous, yeah.
But it's actually like really heavy, right? Like, like all this stuff happens and I kept being like, whoa, like that's super traumatic.
Wait, haven't you talked about this so many times?
Yes, I know, but like watching the show, it's even worse. I don't know, like, they have like a racial sit-in and they like beat the shit out of them. And like, her brother shot himself in the next room. Oh.
And she gets like seriously sexually assaulted at work.
Yeah, she gets, like.
The love of her life dies and she's never going to find love again.
Like, I was like, it was about to happen. And I was like, so he's going to get hit by this bus?
It's like, no, it's like basically the saddest book.
It's awful.
And it's like when it's first on sale, I was like, this is like kind of charming and like, definitely like I think you might like it. I would say to people, and they'd be like, "Well, I just want like a happy book," and I'd be like, "Oh, you should definitely not read this book because it's not happy." People would come in after they read it and be like, "This is the funniest, happiest book I've ever read," and I was like, "Okay."
Like I don't know, maybe the show, like again, we watched the whole show and I was like, "Oh, this is a really pretty show. Like it's beautiful." And so maybe it's just kind of similar, like there's like gloss around everything on the page, but I don't know. I was just
I
like,
think
the
it's all about the tone.
And the story doesn't go anywhere. Like, I didn't care at all. I was like, I already know what happened. Like, I don't, and they introduced these characters late in the thing that are supposed to be important to me. I'm like, oh, so they were pen pals? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
I also find it like wildly offensive that like basically the idea that if anyone just treated their kid like an adult, they'd be geniuses.
Oh, I know it. It's just so ridiculous.
I'm like, no, like not everybody talks to their children like they're babies and like they don't end up geniuses. Like, and if we just treated our dogs like they were smart, like our dogs would talk and be smart. Like, no. There's just too much for me. I was like,
Mom and Dad, I think, said they liked it or something. And I was like, this show, I had a hard time finishing it. I was definitely like, please.
That's the thing. If you like the book, why wouldn't you like the show? Like,
I guess.
But I think it's all about the tone. Like, it has this like upbeat, like funny, charming tone.
Yeah, and I guess we're supposed to really like the main character. She's kind of a badass, I guess. You know,
she's a badass.
Smart. Yeah.
I mean, like the main. She's a badass. She's like super smart, and yeah, she dealt with all this like shitty sexism at work.
Yeah.
And like, you know, overcame it or whatever. But like, I find the premise intensely tragic. That they end the book with her being like, well, I had that one love of my life. And like, I mean, life goes on and I can do other things, but like, I'm never going to love again. And it's like, okay. I'm sorry. That is so fucking sad.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. And like, it's just, I mean, it's really not that different than a Kristen Hanna special. You know, it's like the only way that you can drive plot in this whole story is to have some terrible, tragic thing happen, you know?
Right. Just, I was like, so emotionally manipulative.
Right. I know. I just did not find the story like interesting at all. I was like, I don't care if any of these things happen. Like, whatever.
It's all mind blowing.
Anyway, super popular. There's a brand new edition of Lessons in Chemistry. Actually,
I didn't bring it in. I was like, I can't. Like, what? Why? Who wants that?
Oh, look, it's got like a blue cover
edition
with like some silver stuff on it or whatever. I mean, it's criminal. It should not. No one should ever buy that garbage.
I mean, sales have really dropped off for us. We've had 4 copies sitting in the store for many months.
Oh, really?
Now.
Has it finally dropped off? I mean, God.
For us. And it's finally came off the bestseller shelves. So it's finally off the ABA's bestseller list.
Well, I think every single person in Beverly Farms has a copy at this point. So,
but if 4 more people want to come in and buy our last 4 copies, that'd be great.
Yeah. After this wildly positive recommendation, if you like emotionally manipulative books that only drive plot through terrible tragedy, then this book is for you.
But
it's charming. It's charming. Yeah. I'm charmed.
Mm-hmm. We could go on. We're not going to go on. I actually didn't mind it when I read it, but just when it becomes this wildly popular, it like
you should watch
like,
you should watch like one episode of the show just because it's just
I want to see how pretty it is.
It's gorgeous. I mean, whoever did the costume design, like 10 points for them. They did great. All right. I don't remember what we have to pimp. That we have a Sunday salon coming up at some point in the near future.
June 23rd. So we'll keep pimping that.
That's like forever from now. We don't have any book festivals or anything like that.
No, you know what? I'm so tired. I had my first day off yesterday in 3 weeks. Like, we don't have any events for a little bit because I need a break.
Yeah, we had a lot of events there.
It was a lot. We did a lot the past 3 weeks.
We did. And like some of those events, we sold like 3 books. Like that's
I know.
That keeps you really busy.
It was not good. So, it was not always good. So if you want us to keep doing events.
Are you telling me that books about the future of the labor movement and whether we can manufacture things in the United States is not going to be wildly popular with the book buying public? I don't understand.
We maybe miscalculated on that one, but it was a super conversation. Like, I mean, this is a great event.
How we work is how we live.
I know. I don't want people.
I don't know. We're destined to like exist in nothing but cube farms for the rest of eternity. It's terrible. Or actually, they won't even give us a cube farm. We'll just all be plugged into our laptops at our couch.
You don't even get a cube farm anymore.
No, they don't want to waste the money on the cube. They'll probably charge us rent for our couch in the future at the company store. It's terrible. All right. On that positive note, tell all your friends about how much you like John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about how capitalism sucks. All right, do you have anything else for the kind people from your Manchester, New Hampshire hotel room?
Oh no, just wait till next time though, and I'll tell you all about the exciting books I've learned about.
All right, well, it's only 10:30. You can go out on the town in Manchester. I'm sure there's like some happening stuff.
I'm going out right now.
All right, you should. Okay, see you later,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.